Hey everyone, today we're going to assemble the Giraffe Crane Classic. It's a fairly easy setup, but you need to know the sequence of order in order to do it. Because if you don't, there could be a huge safety hazard and you could potentially hurt or even kill yourself if not done properly. This is a very fun tool when it's up and running, but it's very dangerous. There's literally a ton of weight in the basket, and if it's not handled properly, it is a giant catapult. So let's go through the step and assemble this together. And from there, once you know the order of sequence, it's pretty easy to put together. What you'll need is 2 people. You'll need at least a 4-foot ladder. It'd be better if you have 2 4-foot ladders, but you'll definitely need 1 and 2 apple boxes, ideally. And you want to basically take everything else out of the truck and put it at your side so they're easily available to you, because once you start going, you don't want to reach into the trailer and have to go back and forth. You want them at your disposal. So we're going to start up right now, and then we'll take you to the first step. Okay, so the first piece that you want to do, or the first thing you want to do, is just bring in your cart and find a solid base. You definitely want all corners to be solid, on solid ground. Usually we have a dance floor here that you could use and put under. Here we're on concrete, so it's not too bad, but you definitely want some strong foundation on all 4 corners. You want to make sure that the level is good and check also the diagonal, which is fairly easy. And then once you do that, you use the crank to just make sure all 4 are even. Once you're confident in your strong foundation, then you move on to piece number 1, which is this one here, this big piece. It's also marked. Each piece are marked 1, 2, 3. There's an extension, and then there's the neck to go in, which we're going to show further on. So you'll see me put this on, and then we'll go through what the steps are afterwards. All right, now we've put on the first piece. This is the first piece that goes on the fulcrum here, the center column. And you'll notice right now it's not locked because we need the other fulcrum here, the other center column, to lock this in place. So right now you have one person holding the back, or if you had your ladder, this is where it would be useful. But be careful because it's not very sturdy right now. So ideally you've locked your base nice and sound, and you could just put this on here. Oh. Now let's talk about this. Put this on here. There's 4 spring-loaded screws, which is very easy. There's a ratchet, a socket here. The thing to remember is, which gets everyone, and this could really screw up everything, the order of this. It's marked a little bit here. The weight basket goes here, and the adjustable rod here has to go towards the camera. If that's not it, then you'll be struggling and fighting it and potentially damage the crane. So do not do that. Make sure that you have your things lined up correctly, because it will cause you a lot of pain and you won't be able to finish it. Now I'm going to finish tightening this up. So now we're going to move on. We've put on the center column. We made sure that it's facing the camera, the adjustable rod here. And now we're ready for piece number 2. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you are putting piece number 1, that the film air and the number is the correct side. If the film air is upside down, that means again, you're going to have to flip it around because it will not work. You won't be able to put the basket, and you're going to have to restart from the first. So just make sure that the film air is facing upwards. Okay, the trick to getting these pieces in is not very difficult. There's 4 screws at the end. You'll see there's a larger end than the other one, so it's pretty self-evident which section goes in what. And you just want to line them up with the holes here. The gravity should do the rest. You just want to seat them properly, and then they'll naturally click into place. Okay, so now we got section number 2. It says here 2R, that means for the rear, 2F for the front, pretty self-evident here. And then we just dropped it into place. And if you put your hand inside, there's 2 spring-loaded screws that you want to screw in here. Should just have to go hand tight. Okay, so the next step is we're going to put on the basket. It's going to fit on here. And then afterwards, we're going to put on our rod with the center weight here. So let's do that. So what you want to do is make sure that when you put on the basket, before you tighten these, both rods have to seat properly all the way down. Because you could tighten the screw, but if the basket handles are not all the way in and seated, it's actually not going to hold anything. So make sure whenever you're screwing in that it has properly seated to the bottom. So now, as you can see, we have the basket tightening in. It's obviously hanging, and now we're going to put the support rod with the weight in it. But you can see now that the weight is at least pulling the center down here, and you'll need the ladder on this side. Okay. So this is the weight here. This definitely requires muscles more than anything else. Okay, now we're going to start extending out the arm here and keep building it. That now we know we have our basket, and we're going to add weights as we're adding sections here towards the end to always balance it out. But right now we have our ladder holding the back end, and we should be able to just take our section, which is labeled, if 2 is over here, then our next section should be number 3, which it is, and we're just going to drop it in. Okay. Lower. No, push down. Okay, drop it. Okay, you got it. Okay, now just going to add a bit of weight. So now, adding the third section, I've added 2 weights to the basket already. And you'll see as we go out more, the more you go further out, the more weights you have to add to adjust for it. Spring loaded. Make sure to always go inside, reach inside, and tighten the spring loaded screws here, Allen keys. And now there will be other spring loaded screws in here. Don't get too confused with them. You just want always the top 2 ones at the top to go in. The other ones are for if you're doing different combinations for it. You know, for extended, if you wanted to only extend out to 8 feet or, you know, further out extensions. But if you're going out in sequence, it's always the top 2. So now once you've added this, we need to keep our support rods going. So when we do put on the neck, it's ready to connect. So we're going to go, all the support rods are marked on the collar here. This is the collar right here. You'll see this one is very faintly, but you can see it's number 2. Therefore, number 2 goes right after the fulcrum there, where the rod adjustment is. So you're going to remove the bolt, and you're just going to put it in. So we've just put in rod number 2. And then now what you're going to do is you're going to put on the support for number 3. You'll see inside here, there's a place that this will fit in, and this you'll put in right in here. And it's number 3 with number 3, very easy like that. And now we need our number 3 support rod, which is this one, and it's, if you notice, it will be labeled on the collar, number 3. And then it goes in. These are the hinge that goes in here. So you want to put in the collar first, undo the screw, bolt. All right, so now we built our third section. We put in our support rod. You could keep building this out the same way that you'd be doing. You're adding this piece. There's actually 2 other pieces that could go. One would be the extension, which is immediately after the third one. And then you would have your final section, which is the thinnest one that always goes at the end. But what we're gonna do, this is the 16 feet way here. We're just gonna cap it off and put in the mount for the head, which is the neck here. And we're gonna connect that on the base and then at the support rod. What you probably wanna do is start adding weights as you're doing that. Now we've connected the bottom piece. Let's put in the screws before we mount the support rod. As you can see already, starting to float a little bit. That is obviously a sign that you should start adding weights. You don't want any section to float as you're doing things. So now, before we mounted the support rod, I've already added 2 weights, there's a total of 6 weights right now, and we're only at 16 feet. You see how as you start to extend out, you have to add a lot more weight as you go. So it's never just 1 weight at a time. You start to increase by 2 or 4 weights as you start to extend out. But here, we're just gonna put in the support rod. We'll be ready to go. Okay, push. Okay, good. We're in. And push. Okay, we're in. number 4. So it's fairly easy. You just keep adding weights to it. What you always got to keep remember, it's a catapult. So as soon as you lose weight on one side, you got to lose weight on the other side, or else something is going to go unbalanced, and that's where the danger happens. And again, it's very important that you have a solid foundation. But once you have mastered that, it should be very easy to balance. Actually, you put on the camera and you could really fine tune everything with the center weight. Once you've narrowed in the amount of weights, you're now finessing it with sliding the red weight and adding some half weights. It's pretty wild how just a little bit of difference on this end makes a big difference on that end. Sometimes just even removing an ND filter causes 1 or 2 weights to be removed, or at least the red weight definitely has to slide. So start to know the feel of it, start to know the balance, but there should definitely be just a floating, there should be no resistance if you've balanced it carefully. It's very easy to use and operate once you follow these steps. And now just keep in mind to pack it, you need to do it basically the same steps, just repeated backwards. You don't want to miss a step, because that's where, again, as you're removing weights, if you miss a step, you're going to be too weighted on one side, and then that catapult action is really going to happen. So you want to avoid that, and by doing that is by just repeating the steps backwards. As we did it, you just unbuild it the exact same way, and you want to put it back in the trailer how you found it. So I hope you have fun with it, and be safe out there.